that magic is only really one seed of a full flower of an end effect. So what would you say is your biggest influence outside of magic? You know, who'd you see maybe in, literature, film, or anything else that that made you really develop your character and thinking and ultimately affected your career?
Um, it's the one film director that really affected the way I think about magic and the way I think about performance and the way I think about creating mystery is sort of a surrealist film director by the name of Alejandro Jodorowsky from Chile. And are you familiar with him at all?
No, I'm not.
He he uh, he he uh, he directed two films that were of great impact to me for two different reasons. But I found that they held certain elements of magic and mystery and inner sorcery within them that really kind of made me feel like I can't really explain what happened, but it was definitely a transformative experience just watching the films themselves. And the films are Holy Mountain and a film called Santa Sangre. Um, I think that Holy Mountain is out on DVD now, but I'm not sure about Santa Sangre. But they're very interesting films, and they just are spectacular visually, and actually have a full plot to them, and at the same time create like an incredible amount of just mystery that's both external and internal, and gives you the full gamut of, in my opinion, how magic should be really experienced.
Very fascinating. Very fascinating. All right, this is probably my favorite question that we get to ask over and over and over again. How did you decide, and more specifically, when did you decide to go pro? When did you decide that your art was going to pay the bills, and even as a young father, put money on food on the table for a family?
Um, it's going to sound really crazy, but I've always felt that I've never really felt like I've made any real decisions in my life. Like I always felt like whatever happened to me would just kind of happen to me, and in fact, that's kind of happened so many times over and over in my life by itself that I kind of started to take it for granted that that's just the way things go. Um, I don't think that I ever felt for a second, as long as I've ever lived, that I was ever not going to become, a mystery performer on some level. I think it's always where I've felt like I was the direction that I was going to go in. I know that there were like little obstacles in the way, like, perhaps, my parents thinking that this was a real bad idea, or even, my peer group thinking that it was a bad idea, or anyone thinking it was a bad idea was definitely an obstacle that got in my way. But I kind of, I was always the kind of guy that just kind of let things flow from one thing to another, and my feeling was it seemed like it was calling me to pull me in this particular direction, and that was the direction that I went in, and along the way, you learn a lot of lessons, and you kind of feel like you try to master your art form. You try to stay on the surfboard and ride those waves the best you can, and you wipe out a few times, but you get up and you try to surf again.
How have you dealt with those, or let's say, as the first question, how have you ever had any, serious, crises of faith when it comes to believing that, magic is your destiny and you were going to, do this no matter what? Was there ever any bumps in the roads where you're like, oh my God, have I just made a terrible mistake that has, jackknifed my life?
Um, you know, Fortunately for me, I've run into just the right people, and had just the right I guess, cushion of support around me at all times that, quite frankly, I've never really felt like a strange feeling that I should necessarily do anything else. I'll say this: um, when I got married, my my wife and I remember we were sitting on the staircase, and I said, "You think I should?" I had a cousin who had just gotten a job for General Mills, and uh, and he was looking for restaurant managers, and I said, "You think I should get a job as a restaurant manager?" And she just laughed at me like it was the most ridiculous thought that had ever crossed my mind. And from that point on, I have to say, I never really went back and thought about it because, I mean, the truth is, by the time I was about through my first semester of college, I basically decided to drop out and really just kind of go full force into my career. And at that point, I joined the Denny and Lee show as their stage manager, and just kind of went on the road for about 10 years with him. All the while, Denny was booking me, alongside of him as sort of an extra act, and then I would go off on the road with him and do shows, and it was making me a full living, and then in between, eventually I left him once I got married and started on my own, doing my own thing, and so. It was fortunately, like I said, for me. It was always just having a really good cushion of support of friends and people who I felt were really able to give me the right advice, to pull me in the right direction, and so, I don't think I ever had that problem.
One thing has kind of always led to the other for you, which is very, very cool.
Yeah, for the most part.
Who is your favorite performer who is not like Alain Nu at all? So let's say inside Magic, but favorite guy that you look at and go like, wow, they really, really got something, but it's not your style whatsoever.
Um, wow. Let me think about that for a second. There are really so many people out there that I have to say are like that to me, that it's hard for me to really pinpoint one person and say this person is definitely that. I feel, strangely, that what I do, and even the way I do what I do regarding mentalism and stuff, is so unlike the way most other people even think or do it, that it's not. I don't really see what I do as being that similar to anything else that anybody else actually does. I will say this: I really like Gaetan Bloom an awful lot. I think that he is completely unlike me, and at the same time, maybe about the most brilliant person on the planet, and just beautifully executed magic, and if I were to do illusions, or if I were to try to create like just the most outrageous performance I could ever think of, I would definitely think about Gaetan Bloom. Uh, Otherwise, aside from him, there are just so many guys out there. It's hard for me to just decide on one. Um, I love I love all of them. I think that I think watching different people within different styles and genres of our art form is really inspirational to do, and you really just kind of, Williamson's from my area,
Oh, really?
yeah, he actually started off this dinner theater called the Hayloft Dinner Theater, where he was basically the house magician, and talking about going back to times in which I had to really think about or consider magic or whatever as being my full time career. Um, I was involved in a rock climbing accident when I was young, in which I fell off of a cliff and fell about 20 to 25 feet, and
Wow.
basically really injured myself badly, including breaking my hand, and I was out of commission for a good 3 months or so. And during that 3 months, there was nothing going on except for I was just taking odd jobs and stuff like that. Eventually, I ended up doing this advertising job, but but it was it was right as my cast came off that I looked in the paper and saw that there was a job opening for the Hayloft Dinner Theater, because Dave Williamson was moving on to Magic Masters at the time, and so
That's awesome.
so I took the job over at the Hayloft Dinner Theater, and I basically ended up being their house magician for up until the time that I ended up going back on the road with Denny and Lee. But it was it was kind of a crazy time, and Williamson has since become just another crazy performer that is just unbelievable on a technical level, on just a methodical level, and then on just a sheer entertainment comic level.
Yeah.
I think that he would be another guy that I definitely think about.
He is certainly something